Hello and welcome to the third episode of Building the Decision Tool. In this episode, we're going to be setting up the core application logic and the ways that we interact with the data in the application, as well as writing some tests to make sure that the code we're writing is actually going to work. So the very first thing we're going to do here is add our test framework, and in this case, it's going to be yarn add jest. So this will get jest in the system. While that's going through its thing, I'm going to come over here to package.json and set up a simple shortcut. So this will be test, and really this is just going to be jest at this point. So failed to save the disk. Oh, right. Let me close this and reopen it. There we are. Test, and for now it's just going to be jest. Alright, so we should be able to say yarn test, and it should go through and be like, there's nothing going on. Okay, yes. So let's create a new file in here, and this will be, it'll be inside of the data folder. And what do I want to call this? I'm going to call this decision.js. And it's going to have so the core logic is, or the core data is all going to be stored in immutable objects. So let's add yarn add immutable. So we get that going. So we have immutable installed. We're going to have, I like having a little function here called get initial state. So export const get initial state. And this is really just going to be returning a simple map to begin with. So map from immutable. Alright, so let's write a simple test around this guy. So we'll create a new file in here. This is called decision.test.js. And we're going to import our get initial state from decision. And there's literally no logic in that method at the moment. So the only thing we're going to say is, oops, we're just going to make it, or we're just going to have it confirm that it is actually working. So it gives the expected initial state. And some programmers do not agree with having a test for something this simple, but I like it because if it ever changes for some reason, it gives us a checkpoint for making sure that the things that have changed are the things that I want to change. So I'm just going to expect that get initial state will match a snapshot. Alright, and in order to see this, we'll go ahead and open this up, and I'm going to just run my test down here. So yarn test, and I don't want to have it, I want it running all the time, so there we are. So we see one snapshot written. If we take a look at it, it's just an empty immutable map, which is exactly what we told it to be. Now, in order to interact with this, we're going to have several things that we want to do. For example, we want to add, if we think about our plan, we want to be able to add our actual text of the decision. So let's create a new thing in here, and we're going to call this add decision text. Now, one thing that I notice as I'm going through this is that I'm using the word decision in multiple places, and sometimes it means different things. And so that is a thing to be on the lookout when building software, because naming things is difficult, and you have a lot of different things that are named the same thing. You're setting yourself up for confusion in the future. So that's one of the things that I'm going to be looking for is just making sure that I'm naming things appropriately. So in this case, though, this is going to be an operation that's going to take the current state and the decision text and add the decision text into the state of the application. So export const add decision text. So this is going to be current state and the decision text. And this should be pretty simple. It's just going to return current state dot set n. So this is using immutable.js, and this would be set n. And now we gotta when you're using immutable, your object structure is sort of defined by arrays. And so I'm going to create a new file in here that's where I'm really going to define the structure of my state. So I'm going to create a paths.js, and I'm going to say const get paths equals a function, and export const paths equals paths. And it'll be clear why I'm doing this in a second. Basically, my paths is going to be const it'll be starting with an empty object, and I'm going to return paths here. Alright. So the very first thing I'm going to have is paths.decision text. That's just going to be an array called decision text, like that. Alright, so now when I come over here, I can now import this, import paths from paths. So now I'll say paths.set n, or paths.decision text, and decision text. Alright. So no new tests, so let's write a test for that guy, and add decision text.js, test.js. Alright, so it doesn't have any, so we have a failure down here, and that's because it's saying your test suite must contain at least one test. Of course, we don't have anything in there yet, so we're going to import the thing we're testing, which is add decision text, from add decision text. I don't know why Visual Studio Code is doing that. It's incredibly annoying though. Okay, it adds the decision text to state. It actually, so the wording of this returns is just something I put maybe more thought into it than I should sometime, but returns a new state map with the decision text in it. Alright, there we go. Now the current state is just going to be, we'll just call import from JS. It's going to be an empty map. My decision text is going to be, here is my new decision text, and I'm going to say expect and decision text of current state and decision text to match snapshot. Alright, we have a failed test here. Expect, oh, I don't know why it did that, but there we go. Expect, now we have the snapshot written, and we see the snapshot is, it's got here's my new decision text, so that is looking pretty good. And I think before we add anything else, let's get this wired up. So in order to do that, we're going to come over to our app, and we're going to import get initial state data / decision. We're going to use the new useState functionality to handle the updates and managing of the updates of the DOM based on the state. So let's get that imported, and down here we'll call this decision and update decision. And this will use state, use state of get initial state. There's that. And the other thing we're going to want is our operations. So const operations, and actually we don't have a nice way of getting this yet. So let's come over to decision, and you know what? Does it make sense to put this here? Nah. Sometimes, you know, a question, a constant problem in programming is how to organize your code. And sometimes you're like, do I really need all these other files? And where's the best place to put it? And there's no really universal answers for what is right and wrong in these situations. Really, it's about what's working and what's painful um, for you. So I think at this point, it's not really painful to add a bunch of small files, so that's what I'm going to go with, and we'll see what happens. So this is going to be operations .js, and we're going to import our operations. So this was add decision text from add decision text, and we're going to export it const get operations. And what is this going to say? This is going to be our in order to do this, we need to have the current state. So this is going to be, let's just call this current state. And how do we update it? Update state. And in this case, we're going to return an object here. And the very first thing is going to be add decision text. And what is this going to do? So this is going to do two things. It needs to update the state, but it also needs to run the operation. So we're going to say add decision text. And actually, this needs a decision text. This is a function that takes the decision text, adds it to the current state, and the decision text, and returns it back out. Alright. So that'll work. Let's write some tests around this guy. So new file, operations.test.js. So in this case, we're going to import get operations from operations. We also need to import our add our first operation, which is add decision text. There. And okay, so let's see. What is the first thing we want to test? So we're going to test that get operations includes add decision text. I'm not sure if this is the right test to run or not, but you know, it just seems right at the moment. So let's go for it and see what happens. Okay, so I don't actually want to run these functions, so I'm just gonna mock this guy. Actually, do I need to? Maybe not. Let's just see what it looks like. So I'm gonna say const ops equals get operations, and in order to get this, we need an initial state. And you know what? Let's just import that. Get initial state from decision. And it also needs an update function, which we don't have yet. So let's call this const update state function. So it's just going to be a fake function. Yeah. And you know what? I don't like this. I like keeping my tests a little more isolated. So I'm going to create a import from JS from immutable. So let's get that const initial state. Oops. And it'll always be an empty object in this case. Alright, so now instead of this, we'll have this, and the update state is going to be here. And now, if we say ops.add decision text, and this will be our new decision text, new. Alright, and so in this case, we're going to take a look and say, okay, was update state called with the things that we want? So we're going to expect to do that. All right, update state. To have been called times 1. So that should pass, but it doesn't. Why not? To have been calls. There we go. And let's make sure that it was called with what we want. So we will expect update the state. Mark that calls of 0. So throw another snapshot in here. There we go. And there we go. It's got the updated thing. So that's looking pretty good. Alright, we can switch back over to app again and we say, okay, let's import our get operations. Data operations. Date decision here. Okay, so that's wired up our state for the application as well as our operations. And now we actually want a place where we can enter this information. Okay, so let's say this is going to be like what? Step 1. Enter the decision you want to make. And so here we're going to have like a text area. And really, there we are. The value is going to be decision.getIn. And we need to get our paths in here. Path.decisionText. If it doesn't exist, we'll have an empty string. And then on change, we need to call our operations. So we're going to say operations dot add decision text, and this would be e.target.value. Alright, so now if we come up here, okay, this totally doesn't look very nice, but as we do this, it's working. And just to prove that it's working, let's log our decision every single time. So let's console log decision and decision.2js. So right now it's an empty object. As I come over here and say, is my decision. You see down here it's updating every single time. So everything is wired up and working, and that's looking pretty good. So it doesn't look very good at the moment, but that's okay. I think there's an easy thing we can do to make this look a little better, which is going to be flex direction of column. There we go. That looks a lot better. So I'm not as concerned with how things look at the moment. Really, I just want to get the functionality working the way that I want, but I think that this is a pretty good checkpoint. So to review what we did, we have our application state set up. It's wired up with a use state, and it's working, so that as I edit things in here, it's getting piped through the system. We have our operations set up, and we have our first operation, which is adding the decision text. And that's mixed, all wired up and with tests. So that's a pretty good body of work, and I think we will hit a commit point. So let's take a look at our status. So git status. So we've added package.json. That's going to be adding, I like going through this. So we've added our test script. So we'll stage that. And we've added immutable and jest, so that's good. We've updated our app to do the use state and have our simple thing, so let's have that. We've added, oh, this is yarn lock. I don't think we care about this. And you know what? Git add yarn lock. There we are. And now we have a whole bunch of stuff. So we have our everything in data, our snapshots, and our operations. So let's add all of that. And it's time to commit. So git commit -m. So this is wiring up state management, adding simple operations, adding enter decision text. All right. So that's committed, and I think we will finish episode 3 right here. Next time we'll continue pushing forward on the business logic and handling data in the app. All right. Thanks for watching, guys.